The last Republican presidential nominee, Mitt Romney, called on you to release your back tax returns and said, and I'm quoting him now, there is good reason to believe there is a bombshell in them. Romney said either you're not as wealthy as you say you are, said maybe you haven't paid the kind of taxes we would expect you to pay, or you haven't been giving the money to veterans or disabled people. Are any of those accusations that he has leveled true?
All right, first of all, let me just explain. I was the first one to file a financial disclosure form, almost 100 pages. You don't learn anything about somebody's wealth with a tax return. You learn it from statements. I filed, which shows that I'm worth over $10 billion. I built a great company with very little debt. People were shocked. The people in the back, the reporters, they were shocked when they went down. And I filed it on time. I didn't ask for 5 45-day extensions, which I would have been entitled to. So as far as that's concerned, I filed it, and that's where you find out what kind of a company. You don't learn anything from a tax return. I will say this. Mitt Romney looked like a fool when he delayed and delayed and delayed, and Harry Reid baited him so beautifully. And Mitt Romney didn't file his return until September 21st of 2012, about a month and a half before the election. And it cost him big league. As far as my return, I want to file it, except for many years, I've been audited every year, 12 years or something like that. Every year, they audit me, audit me, audit me. Nobody gets audited. I have friends that are very wealthy people. They never get audited. I get audited every year. I will absolutely give my return, but I'm being audited now for 2 or 3 years, so I can't do it until the audit is finished, obviously, and I think people would understand that.
News, if any, this week on that particular story.
Well, this is a different kind of leak. The other one, I just don't even understand the reason why on earth you would want to interfere with the investigation to try to find a terror network. These are political leaks, and I have never in my 40 years in Washington ever seen anything like this. The steady drum roll, drum beat over the last 3 weeks. Think of the astonishing amount of leaks of conversations that went on in the Oval Office, transcripts of conversations between the president and foreign leaders. Front page of the New York Times today, a story that says that during the summer of 2016 that our intelligence agencies were able to intercept communications that indicated that the Russians were talking about how they could get people in the Trump campaign involved in their effort to disrupt the election. People like Paul Manafort, who was the campaign manager at one point, and Michael Flynn, the national security advisor at one point. That's the front page story of the New York Times today, and it's just one of many that we've had in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and this raises the question that you hear from some conservatives about the deep state, and that the idea that there are people who are deeply embedded, maybe former Obama administration people in law enforcement or intel community, or for political reasons are leaking this information, which they know is going to be damaging to this president.
Interesting. The New York Times, the lead story on this particular topic starts with American spies collected information last summer revealing that senior Russian intelligence and political officials were discussing how to exert influence over Donald Trump through his advisor. I mean, that's a remarkable revelation, talking about the capacity of American spies. I mean, that's what's the lead of this story. I want our viewers to hear some sound from John Brennan on Capitol Hill this week. I want you to listen for this key phrase, reports in the press, and then we're going to discuss this with Chris in just a moment. Let's go ahead and roll that sound.
I don't know what was shared or said in the Oval Office, but if the reports in the press are true that Mr. Trump decided to spontaneously share some intelligence with the Russians, I think he would have basically violated 2 protocols. And those 2 protocols are, one is that such intelligence, classified intelligence, is not shared with visiting foreign ministers or local ambassadors. It's shared through intelligence channels because it needs to be handled the right way, and it needs to make sure that it is not exposed. He didn't do that, if the press charges are accurate.
If the reports in the press are true, if it's entirely a hypothetic, Chris, but it was in testimony and mapped out quite a damning conclusion if it was true, but it's still based on a premise.
Well, I'm not sure I completely agree with you there. Let me say a couple of things about that. John Brennan, who was the CIA director under Barack Obama, there's no love lost between him and Donald Trump. Remember, it was while he was still CIA director that Donald Trump was comparing the intelligence community and some of their leaks to the Nazis. So, you know, they have earned their enmity the old-fashioned way. They just plain don't like each other. The leak of that information and the story that was reported, and there were direct quotes from the transcript of that, have in effect been confirmed by the White House and to a certain degree by the president. Because remember, when the president was meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu on this trip, not to say that the leaks were proper in any way, but the leak does seem to be accurate, which, as I say, in a sense may make it worse.
But it seems to be accurate. Have we independently confirmed that, our network?
Well, I don't know whether our network has, but that's the fact that we have an independently. But Jenna, the fact is that the White House never said that the leak was false. And in fact, when Rex Tillerson was asked about it on Fox News Sunday by me last Sunday, he tried to explain away what was going on there, not to say that it was false. And then in his meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, the president said, "I never mentioned Israel in that conversation," once again seeming to confirm what was going on.
I guess the ideas of seeming to confirm and not having the exact facts is what, when I'm looking at this story, I can't help but wonder. And when we're hearing the testimony time and time again from former officials that are based on reports in the press, even if they're hypothetics that do eventually become true but aren't now, I'm just wondering, again, when we get to the facts of the story and whatever we're looking for. I mean, I guess I'm just curious about the priority on the facts.
Well, in the case of this specific testimony by John Brennan, he doesn't know any more than we do because this event happened after he was out of office. So all he can talk about is the media, and you can take it for what it's worth. You can either believe that, you know, the report is correct or not. I have to say, based on the reaction from White House officials and having been in this town for 40 years, it seems to me pretty clear that the president said what has been reported that he said. You can argue as to how damaging it was and whether he should or shouldn't have said it, but I don't think there's much doubt anymore that he did say it.
And so what is the end result of that if he said it? If that's the conclusion? Is it that it's illegal, that it's... I mean,
No, it's not illegal because he's the president. He can declassify anything that he wants to, but the end conclusion, and conclusion is a matter of opinion, is that he gave information to the Russians that he shouldn't have given, and that raises concerns, as we have with the Brits. The Israelis wonder now whether or not they can share information with us and that it'll be kept safe. Obviously, in the case of the British leak, that had nothing to do with the president.
Right, exactly. And these are different sorts of leaks, but again, it's a theme that continues to come up. And so one of the questions we're examining on this program is what is the impact overall on the American people, whether or not it's relationship with our allies and there's leaks that are happening in this particular way, or whether or not there's leaks internally in the state or in the media that's perhaps damaging to our leader, and what does that mean for us? Perhaps we don't have a conclusion on that yet, Chris, but...
Well, I do. I have a conclusion. I think that it all keeps us less safe. The fact of the matter is, regardless of how you feel about this president, regardless of how you feel about information that's shared, whether for reasons of ego, for politics, for carelessness, that, as I said at the very beginning, I think that there's been a breakdown in the culture of keeping secrets. It's not only improper, it's
so how
illegal.
do you fix it? You said, you know, you've been in Washington 40 years looking at this. How do you fix it? I mean, the president says he's going to do this investigation. It's ongoing. I mean, is this just the status quo, or should our viewers expect that there's going to be a real change based on an investigation?
Well, unfortunately, history would say to us that the leakers don't usually get found. You know, Barack Obama launched a number of leak investigations about leaks that were being not so much for political reasons, but he thought for national security reasons, and we didn't find many of those leakers. And, you know, you just have to hope that the new people who are in charge, like Mike Pompeo, CIA director, Dan Coats, the director of national intelligence, are going to be able to clean house and exert. But, you know, there are an awful lot of people who get this information, and frankly, people in the intelligence community are very good at hiding their footsteps.
Interesting. I look forward to you. Are you going to fly with the Blue Angels? Is that what actually is going to happen? Are you actually going to go in the plane, Chris, or no?
Wow, you're tough on me today, Jenna.
What, the Blue Angels? I want to know, are you going
I'm
up there or
covering
what?
the Blue Angels. They have offered me a trip in the Blue Angels. This is going to be our power player of the week. Have you ever flown in the Blue?
No, I'm dying to, though. I think it would be great.
Well,
Leland says it's amazing.
Dying is the word I'm worried about, too.
No leaks there. We can't have any leaks when it comes to the Blue Angels. Everybody needs to stay on the plane.
One of the things I keep talking about is civilians who fly with the Blue Angels, they black out. So that doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me, but I have been offered a spot to fly in the F-18 Hornet with the Blue Angels. We'll keep you in suspense.
Okay. We're looking forward to it, Chris. I think it'd be great.
It's the best thing you've ever done in your
Chris,
entire
thank you very much.
career.
We wanted to end on a high note, the Blue Angels, literally. Chris, thank you very much. We'll see you on Sunday.
Yeah, blacking out or getting a little queasy, both hazards of the job. Reaction now pouring in from both sides of the aisle after the Congressional Budget Office came out with its quote-unquote score of the GOP House health care bill. The details and what this could mean for repealing Obamacare coming up.
Leads into a possible terror network that may have supported the 22-year-old suicide bomber Salman Abedi. Authorities believe Abedi spent 3 weeks in Libya and passed through a German airport last Thursday on his way back to England. Friday, he was spotted at a Manchester shopping center buying the bag believed to have been used to carry the bomb. A UK security source tells Sky News the bomb contained hydrogen peroxide and may not have been sophisticated as first reported. The source says it could have been made on a kitchen table. Abedi's older brother was arrested in Manchester Tuesday. His father and younger brother taken into custody in Libya yesterday, where authorities say 18-year-old Hashim Abedi confessed to knowledge of the plot and said both he and his brother belonged to ISIS. Here is more from Manchester Police.
I want to reassure people that the arrests that we have made are significant, and initial searches of premises have revealed items that we believe are very important to the investigation. These searches will take several days to complete.
The attack on fans leaving an Ariana Grande concert Monday night killed 22, wounded a total of 116. Of the 75 admitted to 8 hospitals, 23 remain in critical care. And what we see here in St. Anne's Square is an outpouring of love and support from the community. This memorial, Jenna, grows larger by the minute.
Rick, thank you.
President Trump overseas today, not mincing words while addressing NATO leaders, calling them to pay their fair share and also pick up their fight against terrorism. We're going to hear from the president and then break down the exact numbers coming up next. Terror as one of the reasons he wants our NATO allies to pay what he calls their fair share for our common defense. Take a listen.
The NATO of the future must include a great focus on terrorism and immigration, as well as threats from Russia and on NATO's eastern and southern borders. These grave security concerns are the same reason that I have been very, very direct with Secretary Stoltenberg and members of the alliance in saying that NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations. But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense.
The president with those tough words at his first meeting at NATO headquarters in Brussels today. His meeting with the NATO fellow heads of state continues. Let's bring in Steve Hilton. He's the host of Next Revolution with Steve Hilton here on Fox, former director of strategy for British Prime Minister David Cameron. Steve, nice to see you. Thank you. Big picture, does the president have a legitimate gripe here?
He really does. This is an absolutely clear-cut case. And in fact, what's interesting is that while the president, in his own words, is being very direct about it, what he's saying is actually nothing new. I remember when I was working, as you mentioned, with David Cameron, the previous Prime Minister to Theresa May, It was the same issue. President Obama was furious with the British back then that even the UK, which now does meet the 2% target, in those days it didn't. And he was so furious with David Cameron about that he could barely bring himself to discuss any other issue. Now, Obama and his administration handled it, if you could say more diplomatically, behind closed doors. But this is a real issue that's been going on for many, many years.
Just so our viewers understand sort of the way this works, you're supposed to spend 2% of your GDP on your national defense if you're a member of NATO. Back in 2014, NATO agreed that all countries who are members, all 28, would rise up to that 2% level by 2024, 10 years. Is it a little bit disingenuous